Sarah Balzat is a lifelong dancer and has been teaching for 25 years now. As a dancer, she has worked alongside many other incredible artists throughout her career, including Carol Flores, Franklin Diaz, and performing internationally with Eddie Torres for a few years. For Sarah, dance has artistic power and intense healing potential. Being a part of transforming people's understanding of their bodies through dance is an honor that Sarah respects and values dearly. Sarah, it's wonderful to have you on the podcast today. Welcome.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for.
So, Sarah, as a lifelong dancer, at what point did you step into salsa?
Actually, it was my first step into dance.
Oh,
Yeah, and it was kind of late. I grew up in a family of musicians, so I was much more dedicated to music and singing. I have a singing education that I started really, really super early. And for as long as I can remember in this time, I wanted to be a singer. I never was like connected to dance, or I wasn't even really a physical child. Like I wasn't so into sports and stuff like
mm,
this. But I was really connected to Latin culture very early in my life, and I had people around me my whole childhood. So I learned Spanish really early, and I got
hmm
connected to the culture there, and I got in contact with the dance there. But it wasn't something that I would think could be a job or something. It was just like a connective experience. Like you would have a barbecue outside with a family, and then people would play cumbia and merengue, and people would dance to connect, to be together. It was a celebration of connection and family and home, and it didn't have so much to do actually with what it is now that people come in contact with it differently in the Western world. I was actually really lucky that I had this connection that was much more cultural, let's say, because
uh-huh.
that isn't normal for somebody that is born in Germany and that is German, yes. But then I met someone that was actually dancing, and we danced a bit together, and I really fell in love with the expression of the body. I just love to the topic of connection is following me my whole life, and I felt, this is something that kind of combines music and connection, interhuman connection. So that was kind of amazing. I also have a love for analytics, kind everything, analyzing everything. So I so I felt like that was a time where there was no way to really take classes. This was like in the 90s. So there was no way to go to a class and someone would explain you something. What you would do is you go to a social. They weren't even called socials. I don't know. We didn't call them anything, actually. Now everything is a name. But you would go to this party and people would dance, and you would see them dance a move, and you would think, wow, that's so cool. So you would go like closer and watch and try to learn it on the
Yeah.
go. And then before you leave the party, you would in the backyard, you would try to like reconstruct it in a way, which wasn't always possible because you had to see it twice. There's no rewind button in real life. So yeah, I came across a VHS cassette, and there was this Italian couple, which I cannot recall who that was, but they were showing a pattern, and the pattern was so simple, like a crossbody inside turn, something so simple that you do like all the time. We didn't really give those names yet in that time. We didn't have access to the international scene or something. And I watched this VHS cassette so many times to analyze what is exactly happening there all night. And I remember that it after a while, it didn't, when you play a VHS cassette too many times, like it gets really
hmm
used. And yeah, in one point you have to be really careful because you can't use it anymore. You can't watch it anymore.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of time to analyze basically everything I came across because I just was so interested. People dance so differently, and it's such a rich culture. Nobody does the same thing, really. No, nowadays this has changed a lot, but back in those days, um, people were doing the same
Mm.
patterns, but they're doing it so differently with thousands of different techniques. And it always, like, I don't know, it fascinated me so much. I started teaching really early, maybe after a year or so, and not because I wanted, but because they told us. Back then I had like a partner that I would do all the trainings with, and they said, "Oh, you can, if you want, you can train here in this fitness studio if you give a class once a week, and you can train for free all week." So we're like, amazing, let's do this, you know. I didn't really want to do this because I felt kind of intimidated. I had no clue how to do this, you know. I was like so nervous. And I remember that I came in this class and I taught exactly that. I taught this crossbody inside turn, and I had analyzed it already a lot just for myself, but it
I was
came
just
really
thinking you've
handy.
analyzed it so much.
Yes, and it came really, really handy. So I don't know, I fell in love so much with teaching. Like, I felt all that I love and all that I care about has a spot there. The music, people, interhuman connection, the analytics that I love. So somehow, yeah. And I never stopped because I really liked it. Yeah. So
Amazing.
many years in a very short uh explanation.
But what a way into the salsa world. That's amazing.
Yeah, truly. Now it's
Yeah.
always funny because people often ask me this question, and I
Mm.
realize how with the time passing that I answer it a little different all the time, because you become different and you see the same story in a different way, no?
Yeah. Yeah, you
And
start to see it differently and now as well,
yeah,
being further that we get into the future, the more that that way into the salsa world is ever more inaccessible.
that is true. And with this, we also lose the skills that we need to create this. So
Mm.
it's not just that you cannot access this place. You're exiting, actually, you entering into another place. You really do. Like,
Mm.
it's not that you enter the same place through a different door. You don't. You enter
Okay.
completely other place. And there, I don't judge this. There's no judgment because things change, things evolve, um, and there's happening a lot of good stuff as well.
Mm.
But I think that, especially, I see this all with all the new students. We had a discussion just the other week about exchanging, like, what's the music you grew up with? What did you listen to when you were like 13 years old? Because that is really giving you the groove in your body.
Yeah.
Did you listen to soul and blues and, I don't know, swing or jazz, or did you listen to pop? No, so that gives you a completely different vibe in on a cellular level. No,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then at what point did you start bringing philosophy into your dance teaching? How did it start to make its way into your classroom, your dance floor?
I think in general, I'm like a quite philosophical person. Like I said, no, I grew up in a way where I spent a lot of time by myself. So I
Mm.
was reading a lot and um I don't know, having a lot of time thinking about things, let's say.
Oh.
So what happens is that I realized, that is interesting, because you come into dance and you have certain motives why you are there, but dance delivers you what it wants. Dance doesn't care what you want. Dance delivers to you what it wants, right? And one
Okay.
of the
What
things
do you
that,
mean by that?
yeah, one of the things that dance delivers always, but not everybody wants, is confrontation.
Okay.
I think, yeah, well, I mean, you go into dance studies and then there's a teacher and they tell you what you should do, right? With your body, but your
Mhm.
body maybe is not able to do this. So how do I get from a place where I can't do something to a place that I can do something? The gap in
Mhm.
between is confrontation with not knowing something.
Mhm.
And dance is doing this. If we're really honest, life is doing this constantly, but in dance, it's really obvious. In
Uh-huh.
dance, this is really obvious. And we learn a lot of skills in this gap between not knowing and knowing. We learn to read ourselves. We learn to deal with criticism. We learn to be humble with ourselves and our knowledge. And we also learn to be kind with ourselves, right? Because it is a tough process. We learn not to compare ourselves with others because it's so useless to do this. The process is so
Hmm.
unique. Um, and we learn to give a lot of respect and love to our own process. So this per se is a view on life. That is
Yeah.
philosophy. So what we also, I mean, like if you study philosophy, what they tell you, like in the first class, is this famous saying that learning to do philosophy is learning to die. Not that this is like the classic. And it
Uh-huh.
is the same a bit in dance, I think, because we learn that this old version of us dies and we let them go. We let go of the judgmental person that always hates on herself, or
Hmm.
we let go of the judgmental person that always judges the other because it doesn't want to confront with oneself.
Yeah.
And we let go of, we're keeping to actualize ourselves constantly. And I feel that's a gift. And I feel we cannot separate it from the process of learning to dance.
Mm.
So what I want to say regarding your question is, how did I came to implement philosophy into my teaching? I think it's impossible to not be philosophical when
Yeah.
teaching, because then you just cut out a part of humanity, of being
Hmm.
human. No, it's,
Yeah.
we ask for life. What am I doing here? Why am I doing this? Who do I want to be? What do I want to be? How can I contribute? We have so many questions all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and dance is awesome because it can answer many of them by just sending you on a journey.
So it sounds
Yeah.
like you're taking things that dancers learn implicitly over time, like not comparing themselves, working out how to get from point A to point B and dealing with the frustration and the difficulty. But rather than letting that be a more passive part of the learning process, you make it an active, a welcome part of the learning process. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We
Okay.
super embrace this. We embrace this because I think if we take it out, if
Hmm.
we say, "Oh, I'm not," like what unites us all as humans is our vulnerability. You might be totally different than me, and we have maybe nothing in common. But this one thing we have in common, we are vulnerable. We're really easy to hurt physically and mentally. And if I realize this in the other person, that gives so much space for authenticity. And we always say that all the social dances and salsa, especially, is so much about being authentic. Okay, then let's really be authentic, because just being happy and bubbly is not your only part of authenticity.
Mm-mm.
And just giving room for all the spectrum of emotions, because it's is what makes us human, and this what connects us, no matter the race, the age, the gender, the whatever you want to call all these categories. We can be more free there and more creative. Like if we know, okay, so I'm vulnerable because I have problems taking criticism, because I feel a bit less than every time someone criticizes me. And then
Hmm.
I realize that keeps me from learning good things, because instead of saying, yes, I need to learn this, I get defensive and I don't learn anything. So that's not practical for your
Yeah.
dance class that you take. It is not practical. So instead, we're saying, oh yeah, we're all vulnerable. It's hard to take criticism. So why is this so hard for me? Well, it is, and I tell you that it is hard for me, so you can be soft with me while giving me criticism. And like this,
Hmm.
I learn to take it. So
Yeah.
there's potential in not making it too passive. There's a lot of
Yeah.
power in giving it light and saying, yes, and I'm not less than because I'm learning the step slower, or I'm not better than you just because I know more steps than you. Yes.
Yeah. We're all on our own journey.
So yeah.
I think that's a really good way to put the questions back on ourselves in class. And when we think, oh, I'm quite defensive when I receive criticism, rather than that shutdown of, well, I'm not going to listen to it because it's going to upset me, but instead go, well, why do I feel that way? Okay, what's a way that I can receive criticism? Do I need to do something myself inside with my thought process? Do I need to share that with the other person? And I think if we could give space to that in lessons more, how much more fulfilling would our learning journeys be?
Absolutely, absolutely. But I truly believe that a big part of this is what kind of class culture does the teacher promote, right?
Mm,
So if I am a teacher that is only rewarding the most quick learners in my class, for example, no, and I don't reward by progress, but I reward by executing things and directly producing, for example, no,
yeah,
that creates a problematic atmosphere then in which the students that maybe do not learn the step immediately feel discouraged, right?
yeah. It's so yeah.
So if that is what I mean, that it was has happened a lot also in my dance education, that usually the teacher gives the most attention to the people who do most quickly what they want you to do, right? And I think on a just on an educational level, that is not very productive because you just it's a form of exclusion. Yes. I don't say
Yeah, you're only
you shouldn't push the ones that are very talented and quick. You should. Just don't leave the others out. That's why it's like a difficult thing to manage. A classroom
yeah,
management in this way is not simple. Yes.
no.
But also if the teacher doesn't allow anything outside of his own box, for example. Everyone should move exactly like this. If you don't move like this, you're not part of the group, or doesn't give
Mhm.
creative space. So there's a lot of things, unfortunately, that are still happening. Or if
Yeah.
you don't have the body type, they don't even look at you at all because you don't have the body type. Or if you don't wear heels as a woman in a
Mhm,
class,
mhm.
yeah, and they don't take you serious.
Yeah, if we only teach, like you're saying, to the ones that are going to pick it up, we're teaching to one brain type, but we doesn't make someone less able learner. As you've said, it just means you need to manage that class, which is the role of the teacher. It's not to only
Yeah.
teach in one way. You need to have different toolkits and strategies that you can call upon and use 100%. And
Yeah.
you mentioned their
Unfortunately,
body types as well. That's
yeah, this is so
that's a big
important.
one. Like
That's a
we are only
big one.
taught to lead and follow according to one body type. I've never been in a lesson where something other than the typical body type is taught. For example, especially with women's bodies, that it's here's how you do the flick or this move, and we're all different shapes and sizes, the different reaches, different arm lengths, different waist sizes, all of it. So these movements don't work in the, it's not a one box fits all.
Absolutely not. So I think this is really also something that I'm still trying to give into the scene. I have a huge collection of different experience with different body types because this is so
Mhm,
interesting, you know. You learn a certain move and there is kind of a designated way of doing, let's say, a 3 o'clock right turn. There is a designated way of doing it, yes. But everybody has a slight bit different anatomy, for example. Yeah, even though we have 2 arms, 2 legs, and a torso and a head. Yeah, like more or less. Some even don't. But to say this is as a teacher, are you seriously having experience on how to guide different people with different body types without making them feel they are less than? Like you don't have
mhm,
to grow longer legs or tinier ways to execute a good turn. You just need a teacher that actually has experience with enough body types so they can go with you on the journey to find the best way. Technique, if we think of technique as like a tool, is
mhm,
just a collection of how to execute that was discovered by different body types. And now they tell you, do it like this. But it doesn't mean that your body type is included in this collection.
mhm,
So I always say to my students also, look, we're learning a technique today. I'm not teaching you style because that's your own business. That's your creativity, your character. I teach you a technique, not the technique, a technique. And now the job is to find out, does this help me to do something better, more
mhm,
pleasant, with more pleasure? Or does this not help me? And then I throw it away. So I tell you, I give you this technique, stay with it 1 month, because sometimes the technique is difficult And it is actually helpful for your body type, but it needs longer to execute it. So stay with it for 1 month. And if then you realize it's just making me more uncomfortable, I don't feel like I benefit from it, that's a tool you don't need. You go
Mm,
to the market to buy tools to build a kitchen. You buy the tools you need. You don't buy the tools you don't need. And it's the same with technique in salsa or any other dance. Yes.
hmm.
So look at it and make it functional for you. And my job as a teacher is just to help you to make it functional for you. Yes. Instead of looking
Yeah.
at you like a default or telling you you're not, no, you're not talented because you don't have this or this body type. It's not true. It's just laziness of the teacher, really, I feel. And it makes me a bit
Mm.
furious sometimes. Yeah, it
Yeah.
does
Well,
because it hurts people.
yeah, if you've got a very tall follower and a very short leader, it can it can feel upsetting when a move won't work and you're in a lesson and there hasn't been a partner swap in a while and that height disruption is you're not doing the move the right way
Yeah.
because you don't work on heights, but there are other ways.
Yeah, exactly. There are other ways. We have this program where we do role changes. So everyone learns all the roles, and we have
Mm,
some female dancers that are really tiny, and then we have some male dancers that are really tall, and sometimes they fall into this. Now she's the leader in this context, and he's the follower, so she has to lift the hand like this. And I'm like, she's like, but I don't think that works. I'm like, okay, what could we do instead? Like, go
yes.
into it instead of, I'm not fitting in the box. That is like the first thought. I'm not fitting in the box, Sarah. What can I do? Okay, throw the box out because you don't fit. Throw it out. And now let's switch on the beginner's mindset
Mhm.
and go play. Let's play. Because with play, you will find a solution. With pressure, you don't find any solution. You just press yourself in this box and it's uncomfortable and it hurts and it's like you feel wrong, you don't know, the box is wrong, I'm wrong, something is wrong. Yeah.
Mhm.
So then we're like, okay, something is not working. Immediately I go into beginner's mind and play mode, and I play. Maybe I don't have to lift the hand. Maybe I can turn my follower in a different way with the same technique of leading but a different position, or I don't know, and we have fun, and you see them all of a sudden smiling a lot because it's okay to fail and try
Yes.
something that doesn't work because it's the fun of experimenting. And that's
Yeah.
improvisation, which is deeply salsa. Improvise
Yes.
and fail because that's sometimes the characteristics of improvisation.
Mhm. I love that. Put on your beginner hat and play.
Yeah, and it takes away the you have to, you must, why don't you fit
Mm.
in, it
Yeah.
it just says, hey, cool, okay, I don't fit in, great, what else can I do here? That's awesome.
And it's great because when you
Yeah,
bring that kind of attitude in, you bring those kind of space for those conversations, even if it's just two lines back and forth, that changes the culture of the lesson. That brings more questioning, more individuality and flavor into it. So then when you want people to question themselves more, they feel able to. If the teacher is also able to question themselves and question their students,
yeah,
it makes it so much easier for someone else to go, okay, let me think about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it or how
exactly.
I'm doing it.
Totally. Also to ask the question like, okay, guys, here's the technique I'm using for 20 years. Can we look at it together and you tell me what works for you and what doesn't so we can improve it together? Like, even though I'm the teacher in the context, doesn't mean that I'm the full expert of anything. Yes?
Hmm.
I mean, I present you just everything I have learned on my journey, but my journey isn't superior to yours, even though maybe it might be longer. You could make a different, more exciting progress in a year than I did in 20 because you took a journey that was different than mine. So if I close myself to this option of progress, then I'm the one not being able to take critics, which is not so perfect. With no teacher is perfect, right? And
No.
even if you have a lot of experience, you're making mistakes in classes. But if you stay open, if you stay with your heart open, and you realize that we are all together in this, that our vulnerability connects us, then we can learn so much from each other. I don't know. I find this very exciting. And I hope we can do more of that.
Sarah, thank you for sharing your journey with us into salsa, your unique introduction into the salsa scene, and how philosophy has found its way into your dance lessons. It's been wonderful to have you on the podcast today. Thank you very much.
It was my pleasure, Bobby. Thank you so much.
Sarah Balzat will speak to you again soon. Thank you for listening to the Empowered Dancers podcast. If there's an aspect of the dance scene you would like to hear about, or a particular teacher you would like to hear from, drop me a message and I will try to make it happen. Make sure you subscribe to get every episode as it comes out. Thank you so much for the comments and questions you are already sharing. I really, really appreciate it, and I look forward to serving you in next week's episode.